Welcome to the Omni Sports Podcast. Featuring your host, Bobby Labida.
All right, next we're going to talk about the Western Conference standings. I'll try to be a little faster and a little less verbose than I was for the East. But again, we're going to start at the bottom and then work our way to the top. First, you have, or I guess last, you have the San Antonio Spurs, who are 13-48, heading up the bottom very clearly in the West. However, I think if you're a Spurs fan, there's a lot to be excited about. Wemby, he started the year good, but the steps he's taken the last, especially month, have been amazing. I think you should be really excited. The Spurs had a lot of cap space. They've been playing a lot better. They've been competitive against teams that they probably shouldn't be, which is a sign that there's hope, I think, for the future. There's some players that I don't think fit currently in the system, but I think that it makes you're doing what you can, right, in Victor's first season, and I would consider this season a success if I'm a Spurs fan. Then you have the Portland Trailblazers, who I think are going to be in purgatory for a long time. They're 17-42. They have a couple young pieces and Simons and things like that, but this is a team that's reeling from the Dame trade and will be hoping that the assets they got for Dame will end up being a important cog in their machine going forward. But until those pieces are actually in the building, there's not much to look at. Then you have the Memphis Grizzlies, who this is really a lost season for them. They lost Shaw pretty much the whole season, first for suspension, then injury. They lost Steven Adams. They've been the most injured team this whole year, and despite that, they're 20-41. So despite losing so many of their best pieces, they still, they're not at the very bottom, which I think is a sign that if they had these pieces, they'd be more competitive. Then you have the Houston Rockets, who started the year pretty strong and then have kind of faded from into oblivion. I think that they're kind of a long-term experiment as well. I think there's a lot to look forward to, but I don't know when you're spending so much money on Fred VanVleet. He's a good player, but when you're seeking the most cap space into a player like him, I don't know if that's going to be putting you over the edge. But they have a lot to be excited about with Sengun. Then you have the Utah Jazz, who started terribly, then were the hottest team for a while, and now are not doing so great again. They're 27-34, and they're a good 6 games behind from the play-in, and it goes from Utah in the 11 seed to the Lakers in the 10 seed. So I think in the West you have very clearly the top 10 seeds and the bottom 5 seeds. I think there's really I don't think there's going to be any changes on which teams fall into these categories. Will Hardy, I think, has shown he's a really good coach for the Jazz, and if I'm a Jazz fan, I'm excited that he's my coach. I don't know how pieces work together. The roster just feels weird. There's talent, but it just feels weird. They made some trades at the deadline. We'll see how they do. They tend to be active at the deadline, and sometimes that can be a bad thing just because I think you have pieces moving a lot that maybe they don't need to. All right, then into the play-in, you have the Lakers, who are 33-29. The Lakers they're like a step below about how I feel about the Heat. Once they're in the playoffs, let's see, because you have LeBron and AD, and when they have no minutes restrictions and don't have to worry about back-to-backs and are playing 100%, they're a scary team. However, I don't think with Darvin Ham as the coach currently that you can... I don't think it's you're going to have championship aspirations or Western Conference Finals aspirations again like you did last year. I think last year they played above how they were supposed to, and I don't know if they'd be able to repeat that. Then you have the Warriors, who are 32-28. They're 7-3 in their last 10. The Warriors have looked better, but they also just had one of their worst losses of the season to the Celtics, where they lost by over 50 points. So the Warriors are very hot and cold. They're very streaky. It really depends on how they're shooting a lot of the time. While Draymond's there, they have a chance. Clay's look better coming off the bench, and their young guys have had more of a chance. But I worry about the Warriors in a playoff series now, just because I do think age can be a bit of a factor more than it has been in the past. And they haven't shown anything to me that this year that makes me like, if I'm one of the top 4 teams, I'm necessarily scared about them. Then you have the Mavericks, who are 34 and 27. The Mavs, you know, with Luka and Kyrie, I think they always will have a chance in terms of talent. And I think Gafford and PJ Washington trades are looking good. Gives Dallas some depth, some big men who can help. You know, it's really a question is like, Kyrie gonna be there? He has missed a lot of games this season, but that's also kind of the Kyrie Irving story. And then you have Luka, and Luka always seems to show up in the playoffs, and when it matters, I think he really loves those moments. But again, as we're going to get into, the West is stacked, so I'm very curious to see how things shake down. Then you have the Phoenix Suns, who are 35 and 26. They have a lot of injuries with Bradley Beal, who's been, you know, super in and out. Then you have, you know, Booker, who's been injured. Durant's missed a game here or there. So the Suns, really, you worry about their depth. You don't worry about like their top line talent because it's awesome, but you worry about their depth, especially in a playoff series. Do they have enough bigs to deal with some of these bigger teams? I don't know / don't think so. Then you have the Sacramento Kings, who are 34 and 25. They don't give me the same excitement that the Kings did last year. De'Aaron Fox has been contributing more and doing like assists and steals this year because I feel like his shooting form is off and has been since his injury. I don't think he's fully been himself. Sabonis has taken another leap forward that I feel like people have not been paying attention to. Sabonis has been like amazing this year. But the Kings, again, I don't think they can get hot, but I don't know if they match up well in the West that has some of these bigger teams that we're going to talk about. Then you have the Pelicans, who are the 5th seed. They're 36 and 25. And the Pelicans, I think, are a really interesting team because they have experience. They have a lot of talent. They have players that seem to want to play for something bigger than themselves, but also they haven't necessarily with this group done it where they've won big, you know, series or been like, oh my gosh, right? They went far in the in-season tournament, but again, that's the in-season tournament. So we'll see. You know, Brandon Ingram's played well. Zion has played well. Herb Jones I like a lot. So I like the Pelicans. I just don't know. They kind of feel like the odd team out where they're so good, but like I don't know if any single player pushes them over the edge, but they're a huge collection of talent. And then you have the Clippers, who are 39 and 20. The Clippers, they've hit a little bit of a cold patch recently. They're 5-5 in their last 10 after being one of the hottest teams. They lost to the Lakers, as we talked about earlier. And so you worry about like the Clippers psyche when things like that happen, such big losses. I don't think it's like a permanent thing, but the fact that a team this talented can do something like that should always be pause for concern. And because of this, they've fallen back. They were tied with the other 3 teams that we're going to talk about in a moment, but they are now squarely in the 4th seed. Then you have the Nuggets, who are the 3rd seed at 42 and 19. I don't think I have to say much. When the Nuggets want to play, they're the best team in the NBA. Like, I really believe that. You know, the question is, how hurt will they be? Currently, they're not hurt. And Jokic seems like he's having more fun this year, which feels like a weird thing to say. But I feel like he's really like really coming into his own, and that's really fun to watch. Then you have the Timberwolves, who are the 2nd seed at 42 and 19. They've been at the top this whole season, and I feel like they're still being slept on. I know there's a lot of concerns about their offense in the postseason, but I think their defense being as good as it is always going to put you to have a chance. Pretty much, if you look at data from across history, in order to like win a championship, you can't be a mediocre offense unless you have like one of the best defense of all time. But right now you have with them one of the best defenses of all time. So I could see them going far. I am concerned, like a lot of other teams, that, you know, how far will they go in the playoffs? But I definitely think that they can win the first round, and then it's going to really be about matchups. I kind of like them against everyone except maybe Denver, because Denver is scary. And then you have the 1 seed, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who they're like such a mature young team. And I think that they will definitely win a playoff series. Beyond that, I think the Western Conference playoffs is really going to come down to matchups and who's in what seed. and like who makes the play in. I think the West is so dependent on matchups, whereas I feel like the East is very much, will the Celtics, screw the pooch or not? So with that, we have our wrap up of both what it looked like for this season for all the teams and what it's going to look like going forward, and what should be a really exciting end of the season that I hope you all continue to check out.